Of you. Hope you're all safe. Take care of yourself, your family, and the community. Please wear masks when you're outside. Keep washing your hands. You know the hand washing technique. Now we say use any detergent, soap, and wash it for 20 seconds and teach this to others. So as medical students and doctors, we have a lot of responsibility to prevent people getting infected. Okay. So today's topic, this Dr. Rajeshri had already taught you the paraneoplastic syndrome, since it is one of the important topics. I'm just repeating it. As a pathology student, you may just look at it as a question in the examination, probably a 3-marker or a 5-marker. But when you are a practicing physician, surgeon, clinician, whatever, so you may encounter patients who present with different paraneoplastic syndromes. So you should be able to find out the root cause for that. So malignancy could be one of the causes. So the objectives of today's lesson is, I just want to define what is paraneoplastic syndrome and then classify and tell you the salient features of some of them. This already Dr. Rajeshri has told you, the tumor-host interrelationship. The host responds against the tumor based on the immunology of the individual, then effect of tumor on the host. So what is the effect of tumor on the host? There is local effect, cancer cachexia, fever, tumor lysis syndrome, paraneoplastic syndrome. So paraneoplastic syndrome, the topic I have taken, comes under effect of tumor on the host, the 5th one. What are the local effects? There could be obstruction. There could be compression because of the increasing size of the mass or a mass lesion as such. So mechanical obstruction. Simple example is whenever there is a growth in the intestine. It's a hollow organ. So the growth, a malignancy obstructs the lumen and it causes obstruction. Tissue destruction, infarction, ulceration, hemorrhage. I've just taken this cancer cachexia I want to tell you. See, look at this individual. He's so emaciated. So the moment we look at such individuals, a lot of etiological factors come to our mind. Probably starting from one of the physiological causes like aging and wasting of the muscles. So what is this cachexia? What does it mean? So it's a Greek word, kakos meaning bad things, hexis meaning state of being. So cancer cachexia is a multifactorial syndrome which is characterized by marked loss of body weight. Is it just loss of body weight? No, it has something else, muscle wasting. Anorexia, person is not able to eat, doesn't feel like eating, loss of appetite. Asthenia, weakness, fatigue, tiredness, emaciation. And anemia. So this again, you're told about what causes this, the tumor necrosis factor, alpha IL-1, interleukin 1. So I remember my teacher who was telling me, cachexia is not just wasting of the muscles or loss of weight. So look at anemia also as one of the important features of cachexia. So whenever we see, I have seen common people talk about certain illnesses when they see an individual like this. Since age-old days, they say somebody who's emaciated, who looks like this, they used to tell, see, he looks like a TB patient. This is what they were telling. And then, after 1986, when we started seeing cases of AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, they said anybody with so much gross loss of weight, they were telling, he must be having AIDS. So this is the mentality of people. But I just need to tell you that they know two reasons, two causes for this cachexia. So fever, we have learnt about this in Hodgkin's disease, renal cell carcinoma, osteogenic sarcoma. So what is the effect of tumor on the host? The tumor lysis syndrome. So we see this in association with lymphomas, leukemias. Then when we start patients on chemotherapy, then Burkitt's lymphoma, glucocorticoids, hormones, tamoxifen. You know this is given for people with ER/PR positive breast carcinomas. So the manifestations is hyperuricemia. So that tells about the cell turnover. Then hyperkalemia, hyperphosphatemia, hypocalcemia, renal failure. So we have come to the topic proper now, paraneoplastic syndrome. I'll give you a nice analogy. I think you will be able to understand what is paraneoplastic syndrome. So let us define this. It's defined as a group of conditions developing in patients. Who are those patients? Patients with advanced cancer, advanced malignancy. And these conditions, which are neither explained by direct effect of the tumor or distant spread of the tumor, nor by the usual hormone, elaborated by the tissue of origin of the tumor. So you can read this again. Read it on your own. I have just read it once. Read it so you will understand. So 10 to 15% of advanced cancers will have paraneoplastic manifestations. So it's a disease or a symptom which is consequence of a malignancy, but not due to the presence of local cancer cells. So why are you all away from the college now? You say it is due to COVID-19. Is it due to COVID-19? Is it that the virus that has made you stay there, away? So virus, now imagine COVID-19 as the malignancy. So it is the lockdown that is imposed by the regulating authorities to prevent the spread of this viral infection, the actions that are taken. So this lockdown is not directly due to corona or COVID-19 virus. You understand? So best example, I think, the analogy we can take to understand paraneoplastic syndrome. It's not because of the virus effect directly on you that you're staying at home or there is lockdown. It is indirect way. So that is paraneoplastic syndrome. And these paraneoplastic syndromes are mediated through prostate antibodies or production of physiologically active factors or interference with the normal metabolic pathway, or they could be idiopathic also without any reason. Same cytokines, hormones, antigens, all this which act on the remote organ causing specific symptoms. So how do we classify? So one of the objective of this class, I told you definition. I've told you definition of paraneoplastic syndrome and I've just given you an analogy. Hope you have understood. So then how do we categorize these paraneoplastic syndromes? So one is endocrine system, that is endocrine syndrome, neuromuscular syndrome, osseous joint and soft tissue related syndromes, hematological syndrome, gastrointestinal syndrome, renal syndrome, cutaneous syndrome, that is related to the skin, dermal manifestations, and amyloidosis. So let us just go through all this. Why importance I already told you. It may represent the earliest manifestation of occult neoplasm. In patients, they may represent significant clinical problems. They may mimic metastatic disease and therefore confound treatment. So now we have landed up with the first of the paraneoplastic syndrome, that is the endocrine manifestations. The Cushing syndrome, SIADH. So when I write SIADH, what comes to your mind? What is it? Syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone secretion. Hypoglycemia, hypercalcemia, carcinoid syndrome, hyperaldosteronism. See, I told you why you need to know. All patients who have hypoglycemia, you need not say, they're all individuals with diabetes mellitus who are on probably oral hypoglycemic agents or so that has caused hypoglycemia. So there are tumors which cause hypoglycemia. So these etiological factors have to be borne in mind. So the first topic I have taken is hypercalcemia only. What is hypercalcemia? You know the normal serum calcium levels, just go back and refer, reinforce. So this is the most common paraneoplastic endocrine syndrome. It occurs in 5% of all the cancers and it usually occurs in advanced malignancy and we say prognosis is poor. So hypercalcemia when it occurs due to malignancy. So we term this as humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy. HHM, humoral hypercalcemia of malignancy. So what is it due to? It could be due to oversecretion of parathyroid hormone related peptide from malignant tumors. Of course, though virtually any tumor can cause this, remember the important malignancies that give rise to hypercalcemia. Could be squamous cell carcinoma where of any origin, it's repeated, sorry, especially of the lung, squamous cell carcinoma of the lung, carcinoma of the breast, renal cell carcinoma, ovarian or endometrial carcinomas. Even it is said that squamous cell carcinoma of head and neck region, they also can give rise to hypercalcemia. And what I have just depicted here, just remember, intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma or gastric carcinoma. They are rare carcinomas to produce hypercalcemia. So just look at this chart. It is slightly blurred, I think. So here, the paraneoplastic manifestation is mentioned. That is hypercalcemia. So what is the ectopic hormone and what are the tumors? So ectopic hormone is parathyroid hormone related protein which causes hypercalcemia. And which are the tumors? Squamous cell carcinoma of head and neck region, lung and skin. Carcinoma breast, carcinoma genitourinary and gastrointestinal tract. Then, what is the ectopic hormone? 1,2,5-dihydroxy vitamin D in cases of lymphomas. Then parathyroid hormone, PTH, very rare, but remember malignancies of lung and ovary. Prostaglandin E2, PGE2, renal cell carcinoma and carcinoma of the lung. This is just to summarize the causes for hypercalcemia in malignancy. Hypercalcemia as a paraneoplastic syndrome and which are the tumors that I was just telling you. So islet cell tumor of pancreas, because it produces insulin or insulin-like substances. I am going to add to this list. Carcinoid syndrome. So bronchial carcinoids because they secrete serotonin and bradykinin. Polycythemia, which is the hormone responsible, it is erythropoietin. So renal cell carcinoma, hepatocellular carcinoma and cerebellar hemangiomas and hemangioblastomas. This is again a table that tabular column, very nicely given about endocrinopathies from your book. So Cushing syndrome, I'll deal with it later, these two. Hypercalcemia, you just heard now, TGF alpha, tumor necrosis factor, IL-1, parathyroid hormone related protein, the mechanism, positive mechanism, and the tumors which cause this. Then hypoglycemia, just now I told you about insulin secreting tumors. Now there is a list added to it: fibrosarcoma, other mesenchymal sarcomas, hepatocellular carcinoma. Why? Because all these secrete insulin or insulin-like substance. Then carcinoid syndrome. Forget carcinoids especially. Bronchial adenoma, bronchial carcinoid, pancreatic carcinoma, gastric carcinoma. This I've already told you, it's a repetition. So if you repeatedly probably listen to something, you can register it better. Serotonin and bradykinin. Polycythemia is due to erythropoietin production. Renal cell carcinoma, cerebellar hemangioma, and hepatocellular carcinoma. So you have learned about this in your first year, Cushing syndrome. See, look at these two pictorial depictions of a patients with Cushing syndrome. So what is it due to? We know it is ACTH. So ectopic adrenocorticotropin secretion, EAS, or ACTH-like substance. So small cell carcinoma of the lung, pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors, thyroid medullary carcinoma, sometimes carcinoid tumors. So why do I say thyroid medullary carcinoma when I just say medullary carcinoma? So this is one type of morphological type of carcinoma which occurs in the breast also. So when we say medullary carcinoma of thyroid, we're talking about medullary carcinoma occurring in the thyroid. You've heard about amyloid, right? I just want to add a point here. So medullary carcinoma of the thyroid has a stroma with amyloid. This is a frequently asked question, either in Viva or in your multiple choice when you take up entrance exams. So 50% of Cushing syndrome is due to carcinoma lung. Out of this, small cell carcinoma accounts for 27%, bronchial carcinoids 21%. Okay, so bronchial carcinoid can produce Cushing syndrome in addition to the carcinoid syndrome which we just learned. So these are all the manifestations of a patient who is suffering from Cushing syndrome. This you have learned, I'll just repeat: moon phase, peripheral edema, hypertension, severe glucose intolerance, hyperpigmentation, see the red striae, thin arms, central obesity, look at this buffalo hump on the back, proximal myopathy, polydipsia, polyuria, polydipsia. I just repeated, sorry. Then poor wound healing. So these are the features of Cushing syndrome. So we should be able to recognize, make a clinical diagnosis once we see this patients with these features. Then go back to find out what is the cause, endocrine or malignant. Second is SIADH. You know what is it now? Syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion. So insertion of aquaporin 2 in apical membrane in distal tubule. So there is increased water absorption. I'll just tell you the tumors associated, or the tumors which cause SIADH, which are the tumors with which it is associated. Small cell carcinoma of the lung, pancreatic carcinoma, lymphoma, and squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck. So when we say squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck, any other paraneoplastic syndrome that you can remember? Just now we've heard of hypercalcemia. Yes. Neuromuscular syndrome. Simple and easy for you to remember is myasthenia gravis. So which are the tumors which produce this? Thymoma, carcinoma of the lung, So it is immunologically mediated. Neuromuscular disorders, other neuromuscular disorders are seen in patients with carcinoma of the breast, immunologically mediated. This I am just mentioning. This is all for future your entrance examinations. So neurological, Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, paraneoplastic cerebellar degeneration, encephalomyelitis, brainstem encephalitis, anti-NMDA encephalitis, polymyositis, paraneoplastic opsoclonus myoclonus. Okay, once you hear, you're familiar with it, and then read. When you go to read, you say, yeah, I've already heard about it. And you can know about it in detail later. Osseous joint and soft tissue. So it is hypertrophic osteoarthropathy. You've started working in the wards, so you would have seen patients with this. Clubbing of the fingers. See, both these entities, we see the deformity in the distal phalanges and the nails of the fingers, but both are different. So remember bronchial carcinoma as the etiological or the malignancy producing this paraneoplastic syndrome. So what is hypertrophic osteoarthropathy? I'm just telling you because, again, clinical examination, or when you see somebody, if you observe these features, so it gives you an idea about what could be the etiology. Unless you know the etiology, you will not properly treat the sign or symptom which has helped you to make a diagnosis. So hypertrophic osteoarthropathy is characterized by clubbing of the digits. Okay? There are classical triad, 3 features you should remember. Clubbing of the digits, and in advanced cases by periosteal newborn formation and synovial effusion. So this is because of abnormal proliferation of skin and periosteal tissues seen in lung malignancy. So look at this picture I've taken from the net. Look at the distal phalanges. Is it just clubbing? It is something more than the clubbing. So look at that thickening, how it is. And look at that convexity, that baking beak-like projection. So 3 important features are triad of hypertrophic osteoarthropathy is this. Digital clubbing, periostosis of tubular bones, synovial effusion. So read Clinical Methods by Hutchison. So you will learn a lot of this. Be perfect in basics, because general examination is part of all the clinical specialities examination. When you go to a specific organ or a system to examine. So when I'm looking at this, I just remember, when we were posted, first postings medicine in Victoria Hospital, when I was posted to 5th unit, it was Dr. Sriranama. Who were the people who were teaching us? So they were all postgraduate students, such bright postgraduate students with knowledge they had. So we all learned from them. So specifically, in specific, I just want to tell you, so clinical examination basics, we were taught so well. And one of the junior PG who was there teaching when I was just entered after 1.5 years of MBBS was Dr. Krishnamurthy. I'm proud to say he's my husband. Such brilliant teachers, we need to learn from them. So they leave a mark, they engrave in our brain, I feel, whatever a student has to learn. Okay. I just took you out of, this is to give you a break also, and then to bring you back, or to bring your attention back, I just told this. So let us continue now. So dermatological manifestations, I'm just going to tell you about acanthosis. This is nigricans, and Lissy-Trillat syndrome sign. But all these, I'm just going to read out the names, that's all. Dermatomyositis, necrolytic migratory erythema, Sweets syndrome, florid cutaneous papillomatosis, pyoderma gangrenosum, acquired generalized hypertrichosis. All these could be dermatological manifestations of an underlying malignancy. So acanthosis nigricans, internal, we say internal, visceral malignancy, that is malignancy, gastric malignancy and carcinoma of the lung, immunologically mediated. Seborrheic dermatitis, again malignancy of the bowel, immunologically mediated. Exfoliative dermatitis, like especially lymphoma, we can see the manifestations in the skin, primary and secondary also. So this is a repetition now. Acanthosis nigricans. What is acanthosis? It is increased thickness of the epidermis. Usually in the skin, when the epidermis shows hyperplasia, the terminology we use is acanthosis. It's nothing but epidermal hyperplasia, skin hyperplasia. Nigricans, because it is black in color, you can make out that color in the picture here. Which are the malignancies? I told you visceral malignancies, gastrointestinal adenocarcinoma, genitourinary cancers. Example, prostatic cancer, breast cancer and ovarian malignancy. Just a closer picture, you can see how thick is the skin. Looks like rugae. This is axillary region. It is dark in color. This is the nape of the neck, on the nape of the neck. This is again closer picture of the same. See how, because of the acanthosis, thickening of the epidermis, the skin is looking so coarse. This is on the nape of the neck and this is also front of the neck. This is acanthosis nigricans. So next thing you can remember, dermatological manifestation of malignancy is, have you seen elders? If you observe, you can make out many of them have a wart-like growth on the face, forehead or back and all that. Then it is not wart. It is not a squamous cell papilloma or a viral wart. So as age advances, many of the individuals will have. So it will be protruding and many a times we see it as a blackish, discolored, elevated, warty growth. So when it is blackish, the moment you see such a lesion, we always think of what is black in the skin, melanin. So maybe a melanoma or a nevus. So most of them, I start observing now, most of them are like this, they're seborrheic keratosis. Multiple seborrheic keratosis. So when they occur in crops suddenly, then we say it is Lissy-Trillat syndrome. I've just taken a picture from IGDVL, the Indian Journal of Dermatology and Venereology and Leprology. So this, they said, occurred in a patient who had an internal malignancy, that was hepatocellular carcinoma. So that is about two things you remember, acanthosis nigricans and seborrheic keratosis. Hematological manifestations. Thrombophlebitis, that is Trocheus phenomenon in CA pancreas, or carcinoma of the GIT, lung. So tumor products or mucin secreted by these tumor cells. It causes DIC also. What is DIC? Disseminated intravascular coagulation. One of the acute leukemias, we should remember, causing DIC, patients may present with DIC only, is AMLM3. Acute myeloid leukemia, that is acute promyelocytic leukemia. M3 is promyelocytic leukemia. The non-bacterial thrombotic endocarditis, that is hypercoagulability. Then chronic thrombotic phenomenon, especially with mucin secreting carcinomas. Then anemia, this is in tumors arising from thymus, that is thymoma. Other manifestations are granulocytosis, polycythemia. Again, polycythemia you should remember, renal cell carcinoma, which I had told you earlier. Trocheus sign, non-bacterial thrombotic endocarditis, anemia, and DIC. This is just written. These two are extra. This already I had in the previous slide. Then what about the gastrointestinal syndromes? This malabsorption. So lymphoma of the small bowel. Small bowel, you should remember, lymphomas are the common malignant tumors that occur the small intestine, affect the small intestine. Whereas in the large intestine it is adenocarcinoma. Adenocarcinomas occurring in small intestine are very rare. We have seen 1 or 2 cases of adenocarcinoma of the small intestine. Then renal syndrome, that is nephrotic syndrome because of systemic amyloidosis. So this is a chart again that is in the standard textbooks that you have. So after listening to this lecture, this becomes a ready reckoner. You can just go through and see the syndromes and what are the malignant tumors that produce this syndrome and what is the hormone or the hormone-like substance that is going to give rise to these effects. So if you keep on seeing this, print this chart and put it in your room and keep seeing it, you become very familiar with it. Then writing an answer for a short answer or a short essay or whatever becomes very easy for you. So these are key words you should remember. So then you can frame sentences. So lastly, amyloidosis. So primary we see in multiple myeloma, again immunologically mediated, that is AL protein, the light chains, amyloid light chain. Secondary is kidney lymphoma, solid tumors. So malignancies or tumors of kidney, lymphoma, solid tumors. AA protein, amyloid associated protein. So these are paraneoplastic syndromes. Certain tumors are there which have an amyloid stroma. So that is different. I mentioned already a tumor with amyloid stroma. Can you recollect? If you can't, I will show you, I will give you a clue. So I am showing you front of the neck. What is the gland present there? Thyroid. So what did I mention earlier? It is medullary carcinoma of the thyroid with amyloid stroma. So paraneoplastic, so you can see here waxy appearance, intradermal deposits of amyloid around the eye. That is cutaneous amyloidosis. So here we are seeing macroglossia, enlarged tongue. So one of the cause for enlarged tongue is amyloid tongue. So amyloid deposits in the lip and tongue are present in this patient. Note the scalloped appearance of the tongue, so which is shown here, with indentations on both the sides. This occurs because the enlarged tongue, chronically presses against the upper teeth. Yes. So this is for you to identify now what tissue is this, microscopy. It is skin. See the epidermis and the dermis. What's happened to the epidermis? It is atrophic. Why do we say it is atrophic here? Normally you see rete ridges dipping down from the epidermis. So rete ridges are compressed, means there is something in the dermis which is compressing it. So one slide will show you lepromatous leprosy, which shows thinning of the epidermis. The dermis, what stain is this? Is it H&E stain? No, why will H&E stain will be so bright? No. So it is a skin biopsy from cutaneous amyloidosis. So how do we demonstrate amyloid? In H&E stain it appears eosinophilic homogeneous. To say it is amyloid, there are so many stains, but I will just mention one. What is a stain? Please recollect. Congo red. Is it just Congo red? Congophilia? No. So Congo red stain slide examined under polarizing microscopy. So then, what is this color? There is apple green birefringence. So that confirms the deposits which we have seen in HND is nothing but amyloid. So it is punched biopsy of the skin showing amyloid deposits stained with Congo red observed under polarizing microscopy. So another chart you can see. So this is a summary or the take-home message of whatever I discussed with you. A lot of webinars going on. So I was just seeing a WhatsApp forward which said, well, there is no take-home message for webinar lectures, I believe. Why? Why webinar lectures or online lectures don't have a take-home message? Because you're all in your home. So you're already there. What do you take? You're staying there. That was what I just saw in one of the forwards. Okay? So this is, thank you again, it's Rajeshri's slide. Thank you. I'm giving you enough time. It's not a synchronous online learning. This is asynchronous. So one of the principles of adult education is, yes, it has demerits also, merits and meritors. So you are allowed to use your convenient time to listen to the lecture. Okay, not all of us are sitting together and there is a direct relay. So advantages at your end. So please watch, listen to this lecture, then I will send you questions, an assignment for which you will be writing answers and then posting it on the, or sending it through email. So that's about the paraneoplastic syndrome. So I'll take up the topics which you have already sent, repeat topics which, revision topics which you wanted. So see you soon, not just the next week. So this week you will have again another class. So enjoy learning. Learning must be enjoyable. So don't waste your time with all other unnecessary activities. So learn, keep on learning. So make best use of the lockdown period, and you're all staying in a comfortable environment with your parents. So stay safe, be happy, enjoy learning. Thank you.